Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Herman. I manage the technical side of the alliance between Microsoft and Citrix. This is one of the most important alliances in our entire ecosystem of partners. Microsoft and Citrix have been working together since before Windows 3.1. Citrix enabled Windows 3.1 to be multi-user. And over these 35 years, innovation, security, and high performance define what we have been doing together. And it's my honor to introduce Shawn Bass, the Senior Vice President and General Manager at Citrix, who will walk us through what's coming next in innovation, high performance, security, and platform multiplication. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Herman. And welcome, everyone. I appreciate you coming out early in the morning to hear about what Citrix is doing to unlock the value of the Azure Virtual Desktop and Windows 365 platform. So I want to talk a little bit about what Citrix's intent is and what our purpose is. Our purpose is to be the #1 secure application access provider in the world for all types of applications. Now, what most of you know Citrix as is a technology that delivers virtualized Windows applications and virtualized Windows desktops. And that's certainly where we started 35 years ago. But today, we have unique value propositions for all types of applications. Windows applications and desktops, Mac OS virtualization, Linux virtual desktops and virtual apps. We're the only provider in the world that offers cross-platform app and desktop virtualization. But we don't just stop there. We also have technology to enable customers to move from legacy VPN technologies to zero trust network access for delivering private cloud applications, as well as enterprise browser features for securing web and SaaS-based applications. So when we say #1 secure application access provider, we mean across every type of application and every type of client operating system. Now, I want to talk really briefly about modern work and what has changed or transformed in the last decade or so. Obviously, more people are working in hybrid work locations, from coffee shops, from their homes, all over the place. In addition, there is a crazy amount of application sprawl. In the early days of desktop and app virtualization, it was only Windows applications that people were using. Now, those applications are augmented by a large number of mobile apps, web and SaaS applications, next-generation AI-enabled applications, and this is only creating more complexity, more challenges around user experience, and more issues around security and compliance. So I want to talk about things that Citrix is doing for solving user experience, solving security, and solving cost and performance optimization. So we're going to touch on these three main areas on how Citrix adds value on top of Azure Virtual Desktop and on top of Windows 365, with a focus on user experience, security, and optimization, both for cost and for performance and operations. Now, when we talk about these categories, these are not the only areas that Citrix adds value to AVD and Windows 365, but it's the three areas that I want to spend most of our time talking on, because I think these are the ones that most organizations think of as extremely important categories of enabling their hybrid workforce. So let's first start with user experience. Now, for user experience, the goal of any technology delivery is to make it seamless to the end user. We want to ensure that the end user's perception when they're using the technology is, this feels just like when I'm using these applications on my laptop. If you're delivering a virtualized experience and it's cutting across a separate cloud provider, let's say the app's running up in Azure, and another one of their apps is running off of a web or SaaS, and another app is running locally, you want them to feel like that blended experience is as native as if the applications were all running on their endpoint. So responsiveness, fast user interface is really key. The second thing is we want to eliminate any complexity about the location that people are operating from. They shouldn't have a different process on how they run their applications when they're in the office versus when they're on the road versus when they're in one of your traveling remote sites. We need to deliver a seamless experience so that apps are single sign-on enabled, regardless of which identity provider is being used to secure that application. And really importantly, we want to make sure that every device a user connects to their endpoint seamlessly works with every application they need it to work with. And Citrix has spent decades developing a rich set of endpoint peripheral support for our virtualization technology. If you get all of those things right, end users have better productivity, faster adoption of the technology, reduced help desk support calls, and reduced operational costs. These are all things that we do on top of Azure Virtual Desktop and Windows 365 so that you can deliver the best user experience to your users, minimize your operational costs and support costs, and have happy employees. So I want to talk about networking and protocols as something that I think is quite differentiated. Citrix has been developing the HDX protocol for 35 years. We've encountered all sorts of networking situations, whether it's related to high amounts of latency or variable latency, large amounts of packet loss, multiple different protocols that are involved. And a real key in my mind to high definition experience is that the end user doesn't perceive any difference when they're connecting on a great network versus when they're connecting on a very poor network. The system needs to be responsive regardless of the underlying network conditions. Now, it's true that there have been great increases in performance of wide area networks and internet bandwidth, but you still find in many circumstances that end users have a variety of issues that cause user experience problems. It may be a poor Wi-Fi configuration in their home that has dead spots or areas that creates packet loss and latency, and you want the end user to experience a crisp, fluid, high frame rate user experience regardless of what type of underlying network conditions are occurring. So we can frequently operate with customers anywhere from 8 to 10% packet loss in their network, either due to an unreliable internet service provider or a poor Wi-Fi experience in their location, and still get a great user experience. And this is, as I said, 35 years of us developing and optimizing this protocol for all types of networks. Now, graphics and multimedia can be a very challenging area. Multiple organizations are using different types of unified communication solutions, different types of contact center software. All of those, there's an expectation by the end users that it's just going to work. And we have been building support for these unified communications and media solutions for decades to make sure that employees get a great user experience where the audio and video is offloaded to the endpoint wherever possible and not processed on the virtual desktop. This is not only important for user experience and good call quality and good meeting quality, it's also important to reduce your costs on your infrastructure, because if you're running your multimedia content and your meeting content on your virtual desktop platform, you're going to end up having substantially greater compute cost, greater storage cost, greater networking cost. And so to optimize for that not only leads to a great user experience, but also substantially saves you a significant amount of money. We talked a bit about a local-like experience for your graphics, multimedia, and UC. Some really important things we do when organizations have the advantage of having a GPU in their virtual machines or a GPU at the endpoint, we can take advantage of offloading the compression and decompression of the video codecs to those GPUs to, again, give better user experience and optimize for cost. We've also done a lot of innovation around the new AV1 codec. This is a successor to the traditional H.264, H.265 that helps provide even less bandwidth as your users are utilizing your solution, giving them faster user experience, lower cost. So it's a great, great situation. Now, the last thing I want to touch on is what is it like to operate a virtual desktop platform leveraging the Citrix technology. We have a number of different endpoint telemetry tools like UberAgent that can go on all physical endpoints as well as your virtual desktops and virtual app systems. And between UberAgent and Citrix Director and Monitor, we give admins a very quick way of troubleshooting user experience problems that helps them zone in on exactly where the problem's coming from and fix that in a matter of minutes rather than having to spend tons of time going through logs and working between different teams to be able to pinpoint where an issue is occurring. Now, I talked before about unified communications and voice and video conferencing. Now, a lot of our customers are leveraging Microsoft Teams, and we have a long-standing partnership with Microsoft to optimize Teams. In fact, for many, many years, we have delivered optimization for Skype for Business, and then ultimately for Teams when Teams replaced Skype for Business. And these optimizations have been enabled for many, many years. So we had a first-generation Teams optimization that Citrix built ourselves. And then when Microsoft introduced the new Slim Core architecture or VDI 2.0 platform offering of Teams, we were, of course, there on day one having support for the Teams optimization. So Microsoft's been a great partner around Teams. But we also know that in organizations, many times you have needs for unified communications tools outside of your standard offering. This can be for a wide variety of reasons. It could be because you have to do a call with the customer, and the customer sends you the invite, and they are a Cisco WebEx shop or a Zoom shop or whatever the case may be. Those technologies need to work extremely well as well. And so Citrix has a history of optimizing Zoom and WebEx as well to offload the voice and video from the virtual desktop to the endpoint, giving that user a local-like experience and avoiding all of the expensive rendering on the virtual desktop that causes not only user experience issues, but high amounts of CPU and high amounts of bandwidth to run those meetings. Now, those are the primary unified communications meeting platforms, but in addition, organizations have lots of contact center communications partners, whether it's Twilio, Flex, Five9, Amazon Connect, Ribbon. All of these also have to work well. And Citrix has a long history of providing unified communications SDKs to all of these third parties so that all of these technologies work as you expect. So whether your third-party contractors or customers are using one of these tools, or your contact center or service desk is using one of these tools, or in the circumstance, and we see Citrix technology used a lot of times by organizations that are going through mergers and acquisitions or divestitures. And in those circumstances, while you might end up deciding to move that acquisition target onto your UC platform, it's very likely when you first acquire the company, they may have a different unified communication standard or a different contact center standard. So it'd be great to know that when you're deploying your desktop as a service offering, you're going to get a great experience regardless of what unified communications tool that you're using. So Citrix has, as I said, a 35-year history of optimizing all of these platforms, and you can be assured that that's going to work great regardless of which technology your business or your business user customers ultimately use for their platform. Now, I want to talk about a couple things that we're doing within our recent release and something that we're announcing at Ignite. So very excited to share that we are announcing Microsoft Teams optimization for Mac OS, leveraging the new Slim Core for Mac OS. So this complements our previous optimizations we've built with our first generation offload technology. Now that Microsoft has a Slim Core offering for Mac OS, we'll be bringing the VDI 2.0 platform offering for Mac OS Teams to the Citrix platform so that both Windows and Mac OS have the new Slim Core VDI 2.0 platform support. And as soon as Microsoft is able to release a similar Slim Core offering for Linux, we will, of course, add support for the Linux Slim Core in the future as well. Now, I want to touch on two things that we just put out in our recent release. We're trying to make it simpler for customers to make sure their unified communications meeting experience works flawlessly. And in the past, a lot of times when WebEx or Teams or whoever took their first-party plugin and delivered it for your end users, you would sometimes run into a circumstance that the Citrix client experience was upgraded to a latest version, but the plugin component for Teams or Zoom or WebEx might have been a dated version, and then your end users get a suboptimal experience. So what we've done in the new default installation is that we're allowing you to pre-configure the latest version of Teams, WebEx, or Zoom plugins for Citrix in the installations of our product. That way, end users will automatically get the latest and greatest add-on for those unified communications platforms, so you don't have to worry about a separate process to download and install those components inside of your desktop as a service offering or to your endpoints that are running the Workspace app. Another thing that we added that's really helpful is when you're trying to troubleshoot a suboptimal Teams experience, one of the first things you need to look for is the Slim Core optimization working as expected? We've added capabilities in Citrix Monitor and Director that will now show you on a per session basis, is the Teams optimization working? Is it running in optimized fashion or not? That can be your first step to look at on why somebody might be having a bad experience with Teams. And then from there, you can go troubleshoot what's happening with the endpoint software, what's happening with the plugin, to identify where something might be going wrong. In the future, we'll also be tying greater integrations with the Microsoft Graph API so that you can start to get more details about the Teams call quality data directly into the Citrix monitoring tools. So a lot of exciting innovation around Microsoft Teams and all of the other third-party real-time communications components. Now I want to talk about a couple other experience enablers that are quite differentiated for Citrix. That previous slide I showed you of all of those unified communication solutions, those are all known solutions that we have developed optimization for in partnership with all of those third-party vendors. So rest assured, if you're looking at one of those logos on the prior slide, that's going to work out of the box in an optimized fashion. And by optimized, I mean we will offload the video or voice content directly to the endpoint, so it's not going through the virtual desktop at all, and your end users get a great experience. But what about smaller vendors that might have their own voice over IP solution that maybe hasn't partnered with Citrix yet, and they're running a voice over IP solution that traditionally would go through our audio redirection? Again, if you have packet loss, if you have high latency on the network, that may result in a suboptimal or less than perfect user experience for their audio call quality. So we introduced something called HDX loss tolerant mode for our audio redirection stack that can sustain large amounts of packet loss or latency variations and still give users a crystal clear voice experience, even when that optimization has not been created with Citrix. Now, of course, if you come across a vendor that does not have an optimized experience out of the box, you can reach out to your Citrix account team and say, hey, we're using this, this voice or video provider. We don't have an optimization today. Can you work with them to build that optimization? And of course, we'll go do that work. But even in the circumstance an optimization doesn't exist, you can leverage this HDX loss tolerant mode for audio to get crystal clear audio regardless of what type of network connection you have. The other thing that we brought to market is something called our session remote start. This is a great experience for end users that are running into a problem where their logon time to their virtual desktop or virtual app might take 30 seconds, 45 seconds, 60 seconds. In a perfect world, those logons should be about 20 seconds. But there's a variety of reasons why sometimes it's longer than that. Certain policies, certain logon scripts, certain things can make it a longer duration. We built something called Session Remote Start that allows organizations to tie a trigger, which might be somebody badging into the building or somebody's vehicle pulling up to the parking lot. We can tie those triggers into a process that will start the logon process on behalf of the user, put the session in a disconnected state, and then as soon as the user walks up to their PC and signs on, we will connect them to that disconnected session, and they have an instantaneous logon experience. This is something we've been developing over many years, and we've got a large financial customer that had an 80% improvement in logon times, which they calculated out to be about a $2 million savings in business productivity for their users per month. So this can greatly improve user experience and optimize your productivity, not having people wait around to log in and use their applications and desktops. Now, a really, really big announcement that we made, we talked about this online on LinkedIn about a month or two ago that this was coming soon. I'm pleased to announce that Entra ID single sign-on for Citrix DAS is now generally available for our customers. This is something we've been working with Microsoft for about 3 years on, and we're finally happy to be able to bring this to market in a generally available form. Prior to this support, if a customer wanted to use Entra ID single sign-on, they would either have to operate in hybrid Active Directory join mode, or they'd have to leverage something called Citrix Federated Authentication Services, which was a technology we built for dealing with different hybrid identity providers. Now with this integration with Entra ID, you don't need the Citrix Federated Identity Service, and you don't need to deal with hybrid AAD join. You can use Entra native join devices and have a single sign-on passwordless experience with Entra. And a really key takeaway about this is Citrix is the first third-party desktop as a service provider to offer this joint integration with Microsoft. And we're really, really thrilled to have the partnership both with the AVD and Windows 365 team at Microsoft, as well as the Entra team to help us build this integration for our customers. And when I say that this is generally available, I don't just mean that you can download or enable this or turn this on. We literally have lit this up in production for almost all of our tenants as of this event. So if you use Citrix DAS today, you have availability to use Entra ID SSO. Stop by our booth to see a demo of this live. We've also got information we can share on what the changes are that are needed inside of Entra ID to enable this integrated sign-on experience. You can get up and running on this right away. I want to touch on another thing that's identity related, and that is, while we've got this Entra ID support, we oftentimes run into circumstances where customers either have multiple different on-premises Active Directory environments that maybe don't have trust established, and they haven't done a consolidation of their directory service, or you might be doing an acquisition of one company, and you may be Entra, they might be Okta or OneLogon or Ping or some other identity provider. And Citrix does a great job of joining together multiple different directory services, regardless of whether it's AD, Entra, Okta, Ping, and making that one seamless user experience for all employees of the organization. So when you're doing an M&A, every user uses the same workspace app experience, regardless of which backend identity provider, and they get the same look and feel as all of their colleagues. So during mergers and acquisitions, this is a very powerful way to onboard employees, and day one, they get the same experience as your normal corporate users, even though they have different identity provider, different security policies, different endpoint builds, different applications. It's a seamless experience to the end users. So we've been doing this for years, and we allow you to articulate different policies, different apps, regardless of which IDP you're using for your end users. This is something that Citrix uniquely does that no one else in the market does to ease this situation. I want to touch on a couple user experience things that are coming very soon. One that I'm very excited about is HDX Graphics Super Resolution. So there's a lot of talk at this event about AI and how AI can be used for automating workflows and automating user productivity. This is a creative use of AI, leveraging GPUs on the client-side device to be able to sharpen the fidelity of a video stream after it's already sent through the network. So if you remember back in the days when you had DVD players and you could upscale content on the DVD player, this is a very similar concept. We take the pixel stream on the virtual desktop in the cloud, we reduce it down to a lower quality video feed, sort of like a 1080p video feed. We stream that down to the user in a very bandwidth efficient way, and then we leverage the GPU on the client side to sharpen the resolution of that video and upscale it to like a 4K quality. So this is a great use of AI technology in a way that gives you much more efficient user experience, better user experience, lower bandwidth, and it's something that Citrix is bringing to market very, very soon. So I hope you're excited about that. Citrix Assistant is a new technology we're bringing to market that's going to help customers that are running virtual desktops enable their end users to do self-service user experience improvements on things that may be impacting their user experience. So it's quite common in desktop virtualization where somebody might have a CPU issue where an application is running away with CPU or leaking memory or something like that, and that can impact the user experience. So Citrix Assistant will notify the end user that they've got applications that are doing this and offer the opportunity to close those apps. It's optimizing the CPU performance to control excessive use, and it gives the end user ways to do quick maintenance things like clean up temporary files to free up disk space, do hardware diagnostics to make sure their audio and video peripherals are working. It's just a way to give end users self-service ability to fix their issues without logging a help desk ticket and without contacting IT. So let's touch on security and some cool things we do there. So Citrix enables customers to use something called Secure Private Access that replaces existing overly permissive VPNs with a Zero Trust Network Access Tunnel that's a micro-segmented traffic tunnel so that applications can connect to your on-premises environment from your Azure Virtual Desktop or Windows 365 or directly from your endpoint devices. If you have physical PC users that want to get secure access to your intranet private cloud applications, Citrix Secure Access allows you to do this. And again, this can be used inside of AVD and Windows 365, or it can be used on your physical endpoints. This gives you a central way of applying security policy to every type of application, not just virtual apps, but your client-server apps and web and SaaS-based applications as well. And again, all of this goes through one single portal. We've got a customer in Norway, Signo, that has deployed this technology where they're using a mixture of desktop as a service and secure private access so that all of their end users' application needs go through the Citrix workspace experience, whether it's a virtualized desktop or app, or whether it's an on-premises private cloud web application or client-server app. So single unified experience, single security compliance policy set, regardless of the type of app the end users are using. I want to touch on data loss prevention. Citrix does a number of different things to protect your data from people either accidentally leaking it or intentionally trying to leak your data. We do dynamic watermarking on the display so that if an end user screen records or takes a picture of something and shares it, we've got attribution information to identify who took that screenshot or video recording. We have anti-key logging at the session level without requiring endpoint device enrollment. So BYOD devices, you can protect against keyloggers in your desktop as a service environment. We've got policies for controlling USB, clipboard, printing, based on the user's location, all these types of contextual things. All of this is audited, and it works for managed and unmanaged devices. These are very unique differentiated features that Citrix does that no one else in the market does. So it's a great value add on top of an existing Azure Virtual Desktop or Windows 365. And last but not least, we have centralized policy management around all of your printing, print to PDF functionality to enable you to protect your IP in the environment. Here's one example of screen capture, keyboard logging, and watermark to show you the depth and breadth of how many different operating systems Citrix supports these features on. So when we say we have you covered for screen capture prevention and keyboard logging prevention and watermarking, we don't just do it on the Windows Client OS platform. We do this across all of our platforms in our offering, and this is a unique differentiation that Citrix brings to market. I want to show you a quick demo of something coming very soon. One of the things that people keep hearing about in the industry is all of these AI-based screen recording, visual assistance tools that look at your screen and tell you what's happening and tell you how to answer the question. The universities are using Cluely. A lot of students are using Cluely to answer test questions on their proctored exams. So this is something that shows you what Citrix can now do to help you protect against those circumstances. Here we have a virtual desktop that we're going to ask Cluely what the Cluely utility can see inside this virtual desktop. And what you're going to see is that Cluely will tell you exactly what it sees inside this screen. So it's analyzing the screen, and it says, oh, there's a Windows desktop, there's multiple apps, there's a text editor open with a thing that says this is an unprotected desktop, Cluely can see it. So in this circumstance, Cluely sees everything your business user is doing on that endpoint device. Now what we're going to do is enable our app protection policy to be able to block the inspection of Cluely or any other AI-assisted visual screen analysis tool. And we're going to say, hey, what is on this screen now? And Q is going to say, your screen's completely black. There's no visible text or images or anything. This will work not just for Q, but for any AI-assisted endpoint AI screen recorder, whether it's Q, Rewind, Microsoft Recall, any of those. So if you need to be able to protect your virtual desktop users and ensure that their screens are not being read, especially on unmanaged or third-party endpoints where you may not have control of what software runs there, this is a great technology to protect your applications and data. And the last thing I want to talk about is compliance and auditing. Citrix has a great feature called session recording that can allow you to record your end user's screens for security and compliance reasons. We can record it all the time, or we can record it only when certain event triggers occur. So if you have a critical finance application or HR application that you want to initiate recording when that application is launched, we can trigger on that. If you're concerned about potential security intrusions and you want to trigger anytime PowerShell is executed or a command prompt is executed, you can trigger recording at that time and then index that video recording and look for metadata about what the user was doing during that sequence of events. So it's very powerful. We have session records for audit and compliance that you can use to look who logged in at which time, what applications were in use, when were they transferring data to a client-side peripheral like a USB drive, or when did they print. All of that is in our logging capabilities. And this is a value add on top of what Microsoft offers in AVD and Windows 365 out of the box. All right, let's touch on optimization. There are a ton of things we do on top of AVD and Windows 365 to optimize cost, performance, and operations. We have intelligent power management that not only powers machines off when they're not being used, but also helps you right-size virtual machines. And it looks at the usage pattern of a user over a long period of time to optimize the exact right tuning based on the usage pattern of that user. We have great image management technologies that allow you to quickly clone and deploy thousands of virtual machines for your users while saving storage and while saving provisioning time. So this helps you save both cost and operations overhead. We have a technology called Workspace Environment Manager that optimizes CPU on your virtual desktops and on your physical PCs, so end users get a great user experience and you reduce your Azure compute cost by controlling how much CPU utilization happens inside of your virtual desktops. We have real-time visibility across the virtual desktop and all the way out to the endpoint to help you pinpoint performance and troubleshooting issues, and leveraging AI to help assist you in identifying and troubleshooting those issues. Also for automation, we have built Ansible and Terraform providers to enable infrastructure as code automation of the entire Citrix platform. So if your teams are building your desktop and app virtualization technology with an infrastructure as code tool, we have providers for Ansible and Terraform. You can automate the entire provisioning and ongoing operations and maintenance of your Citrix platform with these infrastructure as code tools. Here's a couple statistics to share with you what customers are seeing when they use Citrix with Azure Virtual Desktop. Up to 28% reduction in compute cost. This is real dollars saved. Could be tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of dollars of Azure compute costs that we can save you. 35% reduction in bandwidth costs. As many of you know, you pay for egress bandwidth. The more bandwidth we save you, the less money you pay for that. So up to 35% reduction in bandwidth cost, and up to a 30% reduction in third-party software cost. You may be able to omit buying a third-party monitoring tool, a third-party security tool, a third-party analytics tool, a third-party endpoint thin client platform. These are all things included in the Citrix platform. You can optimize your spend on all these other tools by standardizing on Citrix across the board. Now, in terms of Windows 365, we've got a great case study here with Aviva that saved about 41% of their overall operating costs by managing all of their deployments on-prem and Windows 365, leveraging the Citrix technology. They lowered help desk cost, they saved on third-party software cost, and they improved their operations leveraging Citrix. Now, I want to touch really quickly on something that we've announced called Citrix Adrian. This is our AI chatbot assistant to help in troubleshooting user experience issues. It's conversational QA, just like you're used to with ChatGPT and Gemini and all those tools, but it's specifically designed to help you troubleshoot user issues or plan upgrades in your Citrix environment. So what I'm going to do is show you a quick example of this. This is the Citrix Monitor tool that your IT admins would go to as a first point to be able to troubleshoot any Citrix-related issues that your users are experiencing. And what we're going to show you in this demo is this is your dashboard you're looking at of your sessions. I want to search for a specific user who has reported an issue to IT. They might have called the help desk. They might have called the Citrix team. What's happening with this user? You'll get all the details, and you'll get a topology graph showing the endpoint, the gateway they're connecting to, the virtual desktop they're connecting to. And now we can go to Adrian and say, hey, I want you to analyze this user session to tell me why there may be performance-related issues. And it'll come back and tell you, I detected high latency, I detected high CPU in the virtual desktop. Here's some reasons why those things might be causing a user experience disruption. And it tells you right here, you have high latency and you've got high virtual desktop CPU. The session would have felt sluggish to the user. And then you can go a bit further and say, what should I do to actually fix this problem? And it'll say, hey, if the CPU is a recurring issue, you can increase the virtual desktop size. Otherwise, you might need to kill some applications or solve the CPU issue. And it tells you what you can do about solving the latency issue that the user is having with their local Wi-Fi or their ISP issue. So this is a great tool to help teams troubleshoot any user issues. And you can also use this for planning upgrades. If you want to move to a new version of Citrix or upgrade your NetScaler environment, you can ask Adrian very simple questions of how do I plan this upgrade or migration? And it will give you links to documentation and planning information so that you can do that. Now, Citrix adds a ton of value to Azure Virtual Desktop and Windows 365. We've touched on a couple of these, but there are hundreds of features that we deliver. What I want to do now is play a quick video and welcome a customer to the stage. Let me roll the video first, and then you can understand a bit more about their business.
Citrix is a long-term partner of 𝗦𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 and play a central key role in our IT strategy. As of today, all of the 3,000 non-customer facing applications are exclusively consumed through Citrix technologies that allow our users to have the same experience across the world while ensuring a high standard of security with a complete zero trust approach that helps us as well in streamline the end user device management and standardize it across all our entities. We move from having an on-premise Citrix setup to having Citrix Cloud. We have now a global cloud environment which allow us to use multiple entry points, multiple connection types, and having a boost in terms of availability. We are really confident that having access to features such as Enterprise Browser, Adaptive Authentication, or Uber Agent, all included in our Citrix Platform license, will definitely help us in achieving our goal. Citrix is the entry door to MSA IT.
With that, I'd love to welcome to the stage a great joint Citrix and Microsoft customer, Quentin DRION from MSC.
Thank you, Shawn. Hello, everybody. Welcome. I will have a few minutes in front of me to give you a little bit more context about what we did over the past few years with both Microsoft and Citrix as our partners. But before that, just to give a little bit of context of what is MSC. You saw in the video, we are a shipping logistic company. But what you don't see in the video is the scale of our operations. We are present in more than 150 countries. We have almost 700 offices. We operate 900 fleets over potentially 300 routes over the world, which means that at the end of the day, 20% of everything that's been delivered in the world goes through MSC. It's the largest share in terms of shipping in the world. We have this global worldwide coverage, and the statistics that you can see on the screen, that's give a little bit what we are dealing with on a daily basis. So we have roughly 50,000 IT users. We are now having more than 6,000 business applications, all of them being delivered to Citrix technology, different flavor, but always with Citrix. And recently, over the course of the last 3 years, we had quite a growth through merger and acquisition, where Citrix is also playing us a big helps in terms of integration of the various companies that we're having. To keep a little bit the story, how we went before, you can think that in all these countries over the world, we used to have a little bit of piece of IT. That can be large, that can be super small, but everywhere there was something. We had also local IT team taking care of all of that. That from a headquarters standpoint was a bit an headache in terms of support, cost, operation, and to provide the same quality level of service around the world. So we were having data centers in almost every country, in certain of them multiple data centers as well. And of course, based on what we were having, people were having different applications to do the same purpose. That's a little bit what we are seeing in our business. You need to deal with customs, but customs may be different from one country to the others. So you will have to deal with that and to have this type of environment. So a few years back, more roughly 4 or 5 years, we took the decision to change completely the approach and to build a global cloud environment being done in Azure and using Citrix, as I said in the video, as the entry door for all the application. So what we did is that we transitioned all this application to their on-premise to Azure. We didn't did a lift and shift. We really re-platformed everything in Azure. That was also for us the opportunity to increase our security posture, to check some in regards of authentication, Entra ID support, micro-segmentation. So that was really seen as added features. When we moved all this application, then we did also a kind of the review. We used to have a lot of application being exposed to the internet. So that was also part of the review in terms of security, to reduce this footprint that we were having, to minimize our attack surface. And of course, what we did is aggregated the application. So nowadays, our users, whatever application they need to consume from a business standpoint, they go to Citrix, and they have the potpourri of different applications that they need to use. That may be in-house self-developed application, because we are having a large development team doing core business application, but that's maybe application that we consume that can be something that is being used by 10,000 concurrent users on a daily basis, or once in a while by 2 users. But whatever is the application, it's all being consumed, deployed in the same way. I saw that in video we said 3,000. We are now 6,000 because we made a big push in this year in migrating all the leftover that we have left and right. And the second step for us was to enable secure access also with Citrix SP. We don't want to stick only to having desktop or application being published, but it was mainly also around providing back a certain term of flexibility in the way that the user are accessing their application. So in terms of what we saw, successes, and also looking forward, of course, having all these applications, the consistent access to all these applications, it helps a lot in streamlining our own IT internal operation. So the amount of people that I need in my team to maintain this environment is definitely lower than what we used to have before. The experience is the same. Tomorrow, someone who are consuming an application from Japan, from US, from France, Germany, Africa is all the same way. That helps us also in streamlining the end-user device management. It's all the same for everybody, and so on. We are reviewing also, of course, the way that we provide this application, enabling features such as the DLP, conditional access, policy access, and so on. We made this huge effort in consolidating our tools and software. So we have a lot of automation to maintain this environment, but that helps us to reduce any of the third party that we were having left and right. Considering the size of the environment, you can imagine that there was tools a little bit everywhere. So now in terms of futures, we are migrating all our load balancer to NetScalers. So that's something which is actually ongoing. We are taking care. That will be done in the course of the next 6 months. And we are continuing to look for all the new features and AI capabilities that Citrix is going to offer us in the future. So that's really where we want to continue to leverage the Citrix technology to give more to our end users with performance and security at the same time. I want to thank you, everyone, and welcome back, Shawn, to close out for today.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. All right, Quentin, that was an amazing story that I think highlighted some of the great things that Citrix brings to add value as customers are on that journey to move users to Azure and get the value that Citrix provides on top of that. So the closing thing I would leave you all with is why use Citrix for Windows 365 and for Azure Virtual Desktop? We touched on a ton of innovative things that Citrix does that adds value. This is just a quick snapshot of a number of things that we do that are differentiated on top of what you get out of the box with Azure Virtual Desktop and Windows 365. But I want to assure you, this is just like 50 features of hundreds that we bring to bear when you use Citrix together with AVD and Windows 365. So with that, I would just like to say we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming so early in the morning. Thanks so much to Quentin for sharing the great story of the Better Together partnership with Citrix and Microsoft. If you want to see more, please come to our booth 4013. We have demos of a lot of the things I talked about here in this session. You can see it firsthand. And of course, please provide us your feedback. I know this was a lot of information, but thank you all and appreciate you for coming. Thanks.